Atlanta is on fire again. Fans can't stop talking about what just went down between Kirk Frost, Rasheeda, and Jasmine Washington. The drama started with a single photo that spread across social media faster than wildfire. Picture of Kirk at an upscale jewelry boutique in Midtown, caught red-handed buying a luxury bracelet that insiders claim was not for his wife. The store receipt leaked minutes later, showing Jasmine's initials engraved inside. Within hours, the entire Frost family dynamic was turned upside down. Cameras were rolling when Rasheeda's phone started blowing up. "What is this?" she asked in disbelief, staring at the viral post, showing her husband smiling as he held a velvet box. Kirk's face in the photo said everything to calm, too familiar. Fans immediately flooded Rasheeda's comments, tagging her and demanding answers. "Girl, he did it again," one follower wrote. "Walk away this time. Don't save him," said another. Within 2 minutes, hashtags like #KirkFrostExposed and #JasmineAgain began trending across Atlanta. Inside the boutique, witnesses say Kirk looked nervous, glancing around as he whispered to the jeweler. One employee claimed he kept saying, "Keep this between us." But Atlanta never keeps quiet. Someone recognized him, snapped a quick video, and the internet did the rest. The clip now has over 1 million views. Kirk sliding his credit card through the terminal, a small smirk on his face as he pockets the receipt. And just when fans thought maybe it was a coincidence, Jasmine herself posted a cryptic story an hour later, a gold bracelet with the caption, "Somebody been thoughtful lately." By the time Rasheeda confronted Kirk at the Frost Bistro that evening, tensions were boiling. Staff members described the moment she walked in wearing sunglasses and holding her phone like evidence in a courtroom. Kirk tried to play it cool, greeting her with that same rehearsed calm. "Babe, it's not what it looks like," he started, but Rasheeda wasn't hearing it. "Don't babe me," she fired back, her voice echoing across the restaurant. "You out here shopping for your little side piece again?" Customers froze. The music stopped. Kirk's silence said more than any words could. By midnight, fans outside the bistro were recording live updates, claiming Rasheeda stormed out moments later, refusing to get in the same car with Kirk. One onlooker shouted, "She walked out for real this time." And that's when the headlines exploded. Kirk, Frost busted buying a gift for Jasmine. Rasheeda walks out. As dawn broke over Atlanta, the Frost household was divided. Friends were choosing sides, and Jasmine's name was once again at the center of chaos. But was Kirk truly caught? Or is there more to this story than the cameras captured? Stay tuned, because what happened next will change everything for the Frost family, and fans aren't ready for what's coming. Atlanta was buzzing that morning. The city's gossip channels already flooded with clips of Kirk Frost at that high-end jewelry store. The video showed him standing close to the counter, head tilted slightly. That same calm expression he always wore when he thought no one was watching. The jeweler leaned in to show him something that shimmered under the lights, and Kirk nodded once, approvingly. The price tag was nothing small, and that alone made fans go wild online. Why would Kirk spend that kind of money, unless it was personal? People started digging, connecting dots, tagging Jasmine Washington's profile. And it didn't take long for her to fan the flames herself. Within hours, she posted that single bracelet shot, resting on her wrist with that smug little emoji. The internet didn't need any more proof. Meanwhile, Rasheeda was filming a promotional segment for Frost Bistro when her assistant handed her the phone, face pale. "You need to see this," the girl said quietly. Rasheeda scrolled through her notifications, her eyes narrowing as the clip replayed in her mind. There he was, her husband. Again, she didn't react right away. She simply stared, took a deep breath, and told production to pause. Witnesses said her voice was calm but sharp as glass when she said, "Wrap it up for today." She walked straight out of the room, her phone buzzing non-stop. Fans already flooding her page with messages of sympathy and anger. Back at home, Kirk was pretending nothing was wrong. He was in the living room, flipping through sports highlights, the sound of the TV covering his unease. When Rasheeda walked in, her heels clicking against the hardwood, he didn't look up right away, but he felt her presence dense, heavy, the kind that filled the whole room. "So," she said finally, her voice even, "you gonna tell me what that was?" Kirk turned slowly, that practiced innocence flickering in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" She showed him the phone. The video played between them like a silent accusation. "You at a jewelry store, Kirk," she said, her voice cracking just a little. "You buying jewelry? For who?" He laughed softly, a defensive chuckle. "Man, you know people always trying to start something. That could have been anything." "Anything," she repeated, stepping closer. "You mean like the last anything that turned out to be a whole baby?" Her words cut through the air, sharp enough to draw blood. Kirk's face tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the remote, lowering the TV volume. Rasheeda, you think after all we've been through, I'd be dumb enough to pull that again? She looked at him, eyes wet but steady. I don't think you dumb, Kirk. I think you reckless. While they argued, Jasmine was across town in her apartment, scrolling through comments and sipping iced coffee. She looked unbothered, phone in one hand, satisfaction in her smile. They mad. She laughed to her friend on speaker. I didn't even say his name. Girl, you knew what you were doing, the friend teased. And now they all over you again. Jasmine shrugged. Let them talk. I didn't post nothing but a bracelet. But deep down, she knew what she'd started. She wanted attention, and Kirk had given her the perfect spark. By late evening, word had spread so far that even other cast members were chiming in online. Scrappy went live, saying, "Man, Kirk stay in the headlines, don't he?" Carly Red commented with a few side-eye emojis. Yandy shared a cryptic post about loyalty being tested when no one's watching. Every reaction added fuel. It wasn't just gossip anymore, it was war. Back inside the Frost house, the argument escalated. So who's lying? Kirk, the jeweler, Jasmine, the whole internet, Rasheeda demanded. Kirk rubbed his face, exhausted. I told you, it ain't what it looks like. I was just picking something up for a client. A client, she shot back. Since when you deliver jewelry now? What? Frost Bistro expanding into gifts. Kirk's jaw clenched. You not listening? He said, voice rising. You never listen. Rasheeda slammed her phone on the table. And you never learn. The sound of glass breaking followed. Her water glass slipped, shattering across the floor. Kirk moved to help, but she held up her hand. Don't, she said quietly. Just don't touch me right now. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Kirk stepped back, his chest heaving, his eyes darting toward the door. Outside, paparazzi had already gathered. Someone leaked her location, and flashes started going off near the gate. Reporters were yelling questions. Rasheeda, are you leaving him? Did Kirk buy Jasmine another gift? She didn't answer, just got into her car, face hidden behind big sunglasses. Fans on live streams captured every second. By the time she reached her mother's house, the internet had turned it into a full-blown scandal. Mama Charlene didn't waste time when she opened the door. Lord have mercy. Not again, she said, pulling her daughter inside. Rasheeda broke down, finally letting the tears fall. He promised me, Mama, she whispered. He said we were good. Charlene sighed deeply. Baby, you've been fixing the same man for too long. Maybe it's time he fix himself. Meanwhile, Kirk sat alone on the couch, scrolling through his phone, seeing the clips, the comments, the memes. Kirk Frost caught slipping again. One headline read, "History repeats itself," said another. He threw the phone aside, frustrated. He didn't even know how the video got out. Part of him wanted to call Jasmine, tell her to take that post down, but another part of him didn't want to give her the satisfaction. Then his phone rang. Jasmine. He hesitated, then picked up. What you want? He said sharply. She sounded calm. You good? No. Jasmine, I'm not good. You trying to mess up everything again? She laughed softly. Boy, please. I didn't do nothing. You the one out here shopping like Santa Claus? That bracelet wasn't for you, he snapped. Sure, she said, dragging the word out. Then why my initials on it? He froze. You had them engrave it, she teased. Real bold move. Kirk. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. Man, you play too much. You always say that. She replied, but you always call back. Across town, Rasheeda was sitting with her mother, scrolling through old photos of her and Kirk, back when things looked perfect. I don't even know who that man is anymore, she said quietly. Her mother placed a hand on hers. You do. That's why it hurts. As night fell, Kirk finally left the house, pulling up to a quiet parking lot near the bridge. He sat in the car, lights off, trying to breathe. A paparazzi car rolled by slowly, snapping photos. He didn't move. It was too late. The image of him alone in the dark would be tomorrow's headline. And somewhere in the city, Jasmine smirked as her phone buzzed again, notifications exploding, her name trending once more. She whispered to herself, and just like that, we back on top. But what she didn't know was that someone close to her had recorded her laughing about the whole situation, and that clip was about to leak next, turning the entire story upside down. Under the dim glow of Atlanta streetlights, Kirk Frost's name was once again on every lip, every gossip blog, every late-night livestream. The city felt charged, like the calm before a thunderstorm. After that video from the jewelry store dropped, There wasn't a corner of the internet that didn't echo with speculation. People were dissecting every frame: his body language, the smirk, the timing. By morning, multiple influencers were hosting live breakdowns titled "What was Kirk buying and for who?" Even those who used to defend him were quiet this time, because this wasn't just any random purchase. It was the same boutique where he once bought Rasheeda her anniversary necklace. And now Jasmine had flashed the matching bracelet online. Inside Frost Bistro, the air was thick. Business had slowed. Customers whispered over cocktails, eyes darting toward the kitchen, wondering if Kirk was inside. Staff members avoided mentioning it, but the tension was impossible to hide. Kirk showed up late that day, wearing dark shades, hoping to slide in quietly. But Atlanta never let secrets rest. One of the servers murmured under her breath, "He really came in here like nothing happened." Kirk heard it but kept walking, straight to the office in the back. He locked the door behind him, sat at the desk, and let out a long breath. His phone buzzed, non-stop calls from the network, from producers, from people wanting statements. He ignored them all, until the name Rasheeda flashed across the screen. His stomach tightened. He knew she wasn't calling to talk. When he finally answered, her voice was steady but cold. "You still lying?" she asked. "Because the jeweler already talked." Kirk blinked, confused. "What jeweler?" "The one you told to keep it quiet," she snapped. TMZ got the footage. "Kirk, you think they gonna blur Jasmine's initials out?" He didn't respond, just closed his eyes. "You did this to yourself," she said softly before hanging up. The silence that followed was heavy. Kirk leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his chest rising and falling. He whispered to himself, "How did I end up here again?" That evening, Rasheeda's Instagram went live for the first time since the scandal broke. Thousands of viewers flooded in instantly, comments flying like sparks. She sat in her living room, no makeup, just raw emotion on her face. "I don't know what y'all want me to say," she began. "Every time I think we passed it, something new happens. I built everything with that man. I stood by him when nobody else would." Her voice cracked slightly, but sometimes, standing by someone just means losing yourself. Fans flooded the chat with hearts, prayers, and messages begging her to leave. One comment pinned by viewers read, "Rasheeda deserves peace." Meanwhile, Jasmine was playing a different game. She posted a selfie with the caption, "Truth always comes to light." Within minutes, gossip pages reposted it. She didn't deny anything. She didn't confirm it either. That mystery made the internet spiral even more. People were picking sides: hashtag Team Rasheeda versus hashtag Team Jasmine. A few hours later, Kirk decided to drive to Jasmine's place, hoping to fix the mess quietly before it got worse. The city lights blurred through his windshield as he pulled into her complex. He didn't even make it up the stairs before someone filmed him walking in. By the next morning, that video had already hit 1 million views, with the caption, "Kirk Frost caught sneaking into Jasmine's apartment complex at 2 a.m. Inside, Jasmine opened the door, smirking. "So now you wanna talk?" she teased. Kirk stepped in, lowering his voice. "You need to chill, Jasmine. This whole thing getting out of hand." "Out of hand?" She laughed. "You bought me a bracelet with my initials. What you expect people to think?" "You know that wasn't supposed to go public," he said. "You knew what you were doing when you posted that picture." Jasmine's tone turned sharp. "And what about you? Sneaking around acting like you innocent." She crossed her arms, eyes glinting. "You think I'm gonna sit quiet while she paints me like some homewrecker again?" He moved closer, frustration showing. "You are making it worse." "Nah," she said, shaking her head. "You made it worse the second you walked into that store." Back at home, Rasheeda couldn't sleep. Her mother had stayed the night, just in case. "You don't gotta decide tonight, baby," Charlene said, sitting beside her. "But whatever you do, make sure it's for you this time." Rasheeda nodded quietly. Her phone buzzed again, text after text from friends, producers, even fans offering sympathy. One message caught her eye. It was from a private number. "You deserve better. Stop saving him." The next morning, she showed up at Frost Bistro before opening hours. Kirk was already there, sitting at a corner table. When she walked in, he stood up, guilt written all over his face. "We can't keep doing this," she said flatly. "I'm tired." He tried to explain, but she cut him off. "Don't talk. Just listen." She sat down across from him, hands clasped. "You embarrassed me again. You embarrassed our family. And for what? Attention. Validation. Jasmine." Kirk lowered his head. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" she pressed. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you still can't let her go." His silence was answer enough. Tears welled in her eyes. "I can't keep fighting for someone who keeps choosing chaos." She stood, pushing her chair back. "If you love me, let me go fix my piece. And with that, she turned to leave. Kirk reached out, but she pulled away. Hours later, bloggers posted the exclusive clip of Rasheeda walking out of Frost Bistro. Someone from the inside had recorded it. Her words barely audible but powerful. I'm done. The video went viral instantly. Rasheeda finally walks out. Read one headline. Atlanta's power couple hits breaking point, said another. The internet erupted with theories. Some said she'd already filed papers. Others claimed it was all a publicity stunt for the next season. But behind the scenes, it was all too real. Kirk retreated from the public eye for a few days, while Jasmine continued feeding the chaos, dropping little hints online that kept everyone talking. A week later, Kirk was spotted at a church on the outskirts of Atlanta, sitting alone in the back pew. No cameras, no fans, just him in silence. He stared at the stained glass windows, lost in thought. He whispered to himself, how many times can a man mess up before he runs out of second chances? That same evening, Rasheeda sat down with a well-known Atlanta radio host for an exclusive interview. When asked if she still loved Kirk, she paused for a long moment. Love don't disappear overnight, she said finally, but trust does. And once it's gone, it's hard to build it again. The clip went viral within minutes. Fans hailed her strength, calling her the definition of grace under fire. Others begged her not to take him back. Kirk watched the interview alone, eyes glistening, jaw tight. He wanted to call her, to explain, to tell her everything but what was left to say that hadn't already been said and broken. As the night deepened, a new twist dropped. A local blogger released screenshots allegedly messages between Kirk and Jasmine, with dates that overlapped his wedding anniversary. One message read, "You'll always be my weakness." Another, "She don't make me feel seen like you do." The screenshots spread like wildfire. Rasheeda saw them while she was out with friends. She didn't cry this time. She just sat still, the noise around her fading into a blur. One of her friends whispered, "You okay?" She smiled faintly. "Yeah," she said, standing up. "I just finally see things clearly." And that's when she posted a story that stopped Atlanta cold. A photo of her hand without her wedding ring. Captioned "Peace, greater than promises." Fans exploded with support. Jasmine tried to clap back with her own post, a selfie with a rose emoji, but it backfired instantly. The tide had turned. The people who once mocked Rasheeda were now defending her fiercely. Back at his empty house, Kirk scrolled through the storm of reactions. Every headline, every meme, every quote reminded him of what he'd lost. His reflection in the dark TV screen looked like a man haunted by his own choices. He whispered under his breath, "What have I done?" And just when it seemed like the story had reached its end, a new rumor started spreading online, someone claiming there was another woman in the picture. One that neither Rasheeda nor Jasmine knew about. Atlanta's gossip machine revved up again, promising that the next revelation would be the biggest one yet. 2 days after Rasheeda's ringless photo broke the internet, Atlanta's gossip world caught fire again. What everyone thought was the end of the Frost saga turned out to be the beginning of something even messier. A local entertainment blog posted a blurry screenshot of Kirk at a rooftop lounge, standing close to a woman no one had seen before. Her face was turned slightly away, but her long curls and red dress were enough to send social media into chaos. "Who is she?" the caption screamed. Not Jasmine, not Rasheeda, a new one. Within an hour, the image spread across every platform, sparking the hashtag another one. Rasheeda saw the photo while sitting in the Frost Bistro office, trying to focus on inventory reports. She froze, staring at the screen as the comments piled up under her last post. Fans tagged her again and again, begging her to speak out. "Queen, say something. Don't let him play you twice. Leave him for good." Her hands shook as she locked her phone, whispering, "I'm not doing this again." Mama Charlene, who was there helping with paperwork, looked over and frowned. "Baby, what now?" Rasheeda turned the screen toward her. Charlene's eyes widened. "Oh Lord, that man got a sickness." Across town, Kirk was sitting in his car, outside a studio, unaware the picture had even leaked. He had gone there to clear his head, to talk business with a producer friend. But Atlanta doesn't give peace to people like Kirk. His phone buzzed violently, notification after notification. When he finally checked, his heart dropped. "Damn," he muttered, seeing the photo plastered everywhere. It was the bartender from the lounge, a random woman who had simply leaned in to talk over the music. But context doesn't matter in Atlanta drama. Perception is truth, and Kirk's truth had already been rewritten by the internet. By that evening, Jasmine had joined the chaos, going live with a smug smile. "Y'all really surprised?" she said to thousands of viewers. "Men don't change. They just get better at hiding." She laughed lightly, letting her words linger like smoke. Somebody tell Miss Boss Chick she can have him now. I'm good. Her tone was sharp, but underneath, she sounded jealous. Her voice cracked just enough to betray the front. The live went viral within minutes. Even celebrities started commenting. One Atlanta rapper writing, "Man, Kirk out here acting like he's single every season." Rasheeda sat in her car outside her house later that night, watching Jasmine's clip on repeat. She didn't cry this time. She just stared. Empty. "I'm tired," she whispered. Her phone rang. She let it ring out. It rang again. She finally answered on the fourth try. "What you want?" she asked coldly. "That picture ain't what it looks like," he said immediately. "I was just talking to somebody about the restaurant." "You got a habit of talking to women in red dresses," she snapped. "You even realize how stupid you sound?" Kirk exhaled, frustrated. "I'm trying to fix this, Sheeda, but every time I do, it get worse." "That's because you ain't fixing nothing," she shot back. "You just breaking things slower." Then she hung up. The next morning, TMZ Atlanta released exclusive audio from someone inside Frost Bistro, a recording of Kirk arguing with one of his staff the previous night. His voice was loud, angry, saying things like, "If she wanna walk out, let her, and I'm tired of being painted like the bad guy." Fans dissected every word, calling it proof that Kirk had no remorse. Meanwhile, Jasmine posted another story, this time showing a champagne glass and the caption, "Cheers to freedom." By now, producers from Love and Hip Hop Atlanta were calling both of them nonstop. They smelled ratings gold. "We can turn this into a redemption arc," one producer said to Kirk over the phone. "You just gotta own your story." Kirk muttered something under his breath, but didn't answer. He knew the network would twist it however they wanted. That weekend, Rasheeda agreed to meet him for a private conversation. No cameras, no media. They met at a park they used to take their kids to, sitting on opposite ends of a bench. The silence between them was thick. "I'm only here because we got history," she began softly. "Not because I believe a word you say." Kirk nodded, staring at the ground. "I messed up," he admitted. "I know I did, but it ain't what people think. I wasn't with Jasmine. I wasn't with nobody. I just don't know how to stop being in messes." Rasheeda looked at him, tears threatening but not falling. "You know what hurts," she said quietly. "You talk about your mistakes like they accidents. They not accidents, Kirk. They choices. You choose chaos. Every time." He looked at her then, really look. "You still love me?" he asked. She hesitated. "Loving you don't mean I gotta keep letting you hurt me." Kirk's shoulders slumped. The weight of her words landed harder than any argument they'd ever had. While they talked, Jasmine was being filmed downtown, spotted by paparazzi with her makeup artist. One of the photographers shouted, "You the reason Kirk and Rasheeda breaking up again?" Jasmine just smirked. "Ask Kirk," she said coolly, slipping into her car. The clip spread fast, and soon the narrative online was that Jasmine and Kirk had secretly rekindled things months ago. The rumor got worse when a blogger named Tay Goss dropped a voice memo on her page, a woman sounding suspiciously like Jasmine saying, "Kirk told me he'd done with her for good." Fans compared the voice, matched the tone, and concluded it was Jasmine. She denied it instantly, claiming it was edited. "Y'all desperate," she tweeted. "I got better things to do than chase a married man." But the internet wasn't buying it. At Frost Bistro, business was now collapsing. Sponsors were pulling out, staff were quitting, and the energy was toxic. One night, a customer yelled out, "Where's Jasmine's bracelet now?" Kirk almost lost his composure, slamming his hand on the counter before walking out. Outside, paparazzi lights flashed again, and he muttered under his breath, "I can't breathe in this city." Rasheeda, on the other hand, was doing the opposite, reclaiming her power. She posted a series of photos promoting a new clothing line called Peace Mode. Her caption reading, "Healing looks good on me." Fans flooded her page with love, calling it her glow era. One comment that stood out read, "She turned pain into profit." Even major blogs shared the post, writing headlines like "Rasheeda rebrands heartbreak into empire." Kirk saw the photos late that night and felt something inside him twist. It wasn't jealousy, it was realization. She was moving on, and this time, he couldn't stop her. He dialed her number, but it went straight to voicemail. He left a message anyway. "I know I broke everything we built," he said softly. "I can't ask you to forgive me again. I just want you to remember that I loved you, even when I didn't know how to show it." As his voice cracked on the last word, across the city Jasmine was also crying. Not for Kirk, but for herself. She realized the attention she'd wanted had turned her into a villain again. She sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through thousands of hate comments. Homewrecker, liar, clout chaser. She closed the app, tossing her phone aside, whispering, "They don't even know the whole story." But even she couldn't tell what the whole story was anymore. The next morning, Atlanta woke up to yet another bombshell: a leaked text thread, supposedly between Kirk and Jasmine, but this time it included dates from just 2 weeks ago. One message read, "I just need peace too, but you, the only one who gets me." The screenshots were posted by an anonymous account, but insiders suspected someone from Jasmine's inner circle. When Rasheeda saw it, she didn't post, didn't rant, didn't even call him. She just booked a flight to Puerto Rico. Fans pieced it together after she shared a photo of a sunset with the caption, "Sometimes distance is clarity." She turned off her comments, packed her bags, and left Atlanta behind, at least for now. Meanwhile, Kirk stood in their empty house, scrolling through her feed, realizing she was gone. "She really left," he said quietly, almost to himself. His phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "You still haven't learned." There was no name, no clue, just those words. And as Atlanta's skyline glowed in the distance, the Frost story hung in the air like smoke, unfinished, unresolved, and ready for the next explosion that everyone knew was coming. When Rasheeda's plane lifted off the runway that night, Atlanta looked like a blur of memories fading behind her. She leaned her head against the window, eyes heavy but open, watching the lights shrink until there was nothing but clouds. Her phone was on airplane mode, but she kept it in her hand, scrolling through old photos of her and Kirk's smiling faces, matching outfits, family trips that now felt staged in hindsight. "We were a brand," she whispered to herself, "not a couple." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them. She let them fall quietly, one by one. Back in Atlanta, Kirk was pacing the living room, restless and half-drunk. The house was too quiet. Every sound echoed. He opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and slammed the door shut again. "She just left," he said to himself, shaking his head. "She really gone?" His phone rang. It was Jasmine. He hesitated, but answered anyway. "What you want?" His tone was rough. "You seen the blogs?" she said quickly. "They saying I leaked the texts." "I didn't. Kirk, I swear." "Don't matter now," he muttered. "You already got what you wanted." She paused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Attention," he said flatly. "You've been chasing cameras since the day I met you." "That's not fair," she snapped. "You knew what this was. You wanted it to—" "Nah," he said quietly. "I wanted peace. You wanted headlines." He hung up before she could reply. By the next morning, fans noticed Rasheeda's sudden silence. Her stores had paused operations, Frost Bistro remained closed for maintenance, and her team issued a vague statement about personal matters. But Atlanta thrives on speculation, and speculation turned into stories. One outlet claimed Rasheeda was meeting a divorce lawyer in Puerto Rico. Another said she was spotted with a mystery man at a resort. Neither was true, but truth no longer mattered. It was all content, all clicks. In Puerto Rico, Rasheeda was sitting by the ocean, finally breathing. She wore sunglasses, a simple dress, and peace for the first time in years. A waitress brought her a drink and recognized her immediately. "You that lady from Love and Hip Hop, right?" Rasheeda smiled politely. "Yeah, that's me." "Girl, you strong," the waitress said softly. "We all saw what he did. You ain't deserve that." Rasheeda chuckled. "Thank you." As the woman walked away, Rasheeda stared at the waves and whispered, "Maybe I needed to break to see my worth again." Meanwhile, Jasmine's world was crumbling. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, blogs wanting interviews, ex-friends sending screenshots, producers offering deals. She felt trapped. She had played the game too long and lost control of the board. Her friend Tasha came over that afternoon, sitting on the couch beside her. "Girl, this getting ugly," Tasha said, glancing at the phone lighting up again. "They saying Kirk cut you off completely." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "Let them talk." "But did he?" Tasha asked softly. Jasmine didn't answer. Her silence was enough. Kirk, desperate to fix his image, finally agreed to sit down for a recorded interview with a local podcast. He wore a black hoodie and avoided eye contact with the host. The interviewer wasted no time. "Kirk, Atlanta thinks you out here wilding again. Did you buy that bracelet for Jasmine or not?" Kirk sighed. "Man, people see one thing and build a whole movie. I made a mistake. Yeah, I was trying to do something nice for someone who didn't deserve it, but I ain't cheating. I just made bad choices." "So you saying Jasmine lying?" the host pressed. Kirk shook his head. "I'm saying she play victim too well." The clip went viral. Fans divided instantly, half calling him manipulative, half saying at least he owned up. Jasmine clapped back on her story, posting, "Funny how men rewrite history when the camera's on." Then she added a song lyric, He say he faithful, but the streets know better. The shade was obvious. While the drama exploded online, Rasheeda's piece was interrupted. Her manager flew to Puerto Rico to update her on the chaos. They planning a reunion special, he said as they sat in the resort cafe. They want you back. They think this is the season to break records. Rasheeda smirked. Of course they do. They feed on pain. You could control the story, he offered. Set the record straight. She thought for a moment, then said, nah. Sometimes silence speaks louder. That evening, Kirk showed up at his mom's house. He hadn't been there in months. Boy, what you doing here looking like you lost your last dollar, she said as he walked in. I messed up again, he admitted, voice low. You think, she snapped. You've been messing up since the 90s. When you've gone grow up. Kirk laughed weakly. Maybe never, she sighed, shaking her head. Then don't expect a woman like Rasheeda to keep waiting. She tired, Kirk, and I don't blame her. He looked down at his hands. I know. Later that night, Jasmine posted another story, this time crying. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. I didn't ask for this, she said, voice trembling. Everybody calling me names. I ain't ruined nobody's marriage. He came to me. She paused, wiping her face. Y'all don't know what he told me. He said he was done with her. Fans were split again, arguing in the comments. Some believed her. Others said she was playing victim again. One fan commented, girl, you've been done with yourself. While Jasmine spiraled online, Rasheeda received an anonymous message on her burner account. It was a short video clip, grainy, but clear enough. Kirk and Jasmine, sitting in a car, talking. The timestamp showed it was from 2 weeks before the scandal broke. In the clip, Kirk was saying, just keep this low until I figure things out. Jasmine replied, you always say that, Kirk. Rasheeda watched the clip 3 times, her stomach dropping further each time. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just whispered, confirmation. By morning, she had posted one final message on her main page, a black screen with white text. Sometimes closure means silence. Within minutes, fans flooded the post with comments, knowing exactly what it meant. She done for real this time, one wrote. The Queen, finally choosing herself, said another. Back in Atlanta, Kirk saw the post and knew it was over. He called her one last time. No answer. He sent a message that simply said, I understand. Then he tossed his phone aside and walked out of the house, disappearing into the city that had turned their love story into a public soap opera. But the story didn't stop there. A week later, an entertainment site claimed Jasmine had checked herself into a wellness retreat. Another rumor said Kirk was seen in therapy. Rasheeda, meanwhile, was spotted smiling at an event in Los Angeles, glowing, her ring finger still bare. When a reporter asked about Kirk, she simply said, he's part of my story, not my ending. That quote became the headline everywhere. And just like that, Rasheeda turned from scandal survivor to symbol of strength. Kirk watched the clip late one night, eyes tired but soft, whispering, maybe that's how it was always supposed to end. But Atlanta never sleeps. And as cameras started rolling again for a new season, a producer leaned over and said to his assistant, you think they really done? The assistant smirked. Not in this city. Atlanta always got one more secret left. A full month passed since Rasheeda left Atlanta. Yet the echoes of her departure still lingered through every radio show, blog headline, and Twitter space. Frost Bistro had reopened, but the place didn't feel the same. The laughter that once filled its corners was replaced by murmurs and side glances. Even Kirk's staff treated him differently. Now respectful, yes, but distant. The world had watched him fall from the pedestal he'd built beside Rasheeda. And Atlanta had no mercy for a man who couldn't stay loyal twice. He walked in one morning wearing dark shades, the smell of regret hanging on him stronger than cologne. A waitress whispered to another, he looked older. He did. His face carried the weight of too many sleepless nights, and his voice had lost its usual confidence. He checked the cash register, pretended to read the reports, and avoided eye contact. Everything reminded him of her, the countertop she designed, the wine list she curated, even the playlist echoing faintly through the speakers. He stopped in the middle of the dining room and whispered under his breath, this used to feel like home. That same day, Rasheeda's flight landed quietly back in Atlanta. She hadn't planned on returning yet, but business meetings and store openings forced her hand. She was calmer now, detached, dressed in soft neutrals and quiet energy. Fans spotted her at the airport and rushed to take pictures. She smiled politely but didn't speak. The comments started immediately. She glowing different, unbothered queen. Kirk somewhere crying. And for once, they were right. She had found her stillness, and it terrified him more than anger ever did. By evening, Kirk got word she was back. He called scrappy, who had stayed neutral through the chaos. She back in town? Kirk asked. Yeah, Scrappy said carefully. But she don't wanna see nobody. She focused. Bro. Let her breathe. Kirk rubbed his face. I just wanna talk. Talk about what? You already said it all, just not when it mattered. The line went quiet for a moment. She ain't the same woman you left, Kirk Scrappy said finally. And maybe that's your lesson. Meanwhile, Jasmine had gone silent online. Her followers dropped overnight. Her sponsorships gone. She sat in her apartment scrolling through old photos, realizing she wasn't the main character anymore. She was the cautionary tale. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Hope it was worth it. She didn't reply, but her hands trembled. She knew who it was. The next day, Kirk decided to take his chances. He drove to one of Rasheeda's boutiques and waited outside until she arrived. When she stepped out of her car, their eyes met for the first time in weeks. She froze for a second, then sighed. Really, Kirk? He walked closer, cautious. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. She looked tired, not angry, just done. You said that last time, she said, and it turned into 5 years of the same conversation. He nodded, guilt heavy in his voice. I know, but I had to see you. To say thank you? She frowned slightly. For what? For holding me down longer than I deserved, he said quietly. For building me up when I kept tearing myself down. Her eyes softened. Just a little. Kirk, I don't hate you, she said. I just can't keep loving you the way you want me to. So that's it? He asked. That's it, she said firmly. You used to be my peace, and now you're my lesson. Then she walked inside, leaving him standing there, speechless. Inside the store, her assistant whispered, You okay? Rasheeda smiled faintly. Yeah, I think I finally am. That night, Atlanta saw something it hadn't in months. Rasheeda out in public, smiling for real. She attended a charity event with friends, her dress simple but radiant. The cameras followed her, but she didn't shy away. When reporters asked about Kirk, she simply said, Some stories end for a reason. And that's okay. The clip trended for days, fans praising her strength. Back at Frost Bistro, Kirk watched the video on mute. He smiled sadly, whispering, She meant it this time. He picked up a framed photo of them from the counter, their wedding day frozen in time. He set it down carefully, stood up, and walked out into the night. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat on her balcony with her phone lighting up again. A producer from a streaming network had offered her a documentary deal. Redemption, the Jasmine Washington story. She stared at the email for a long time, torn between disappearing completely and chasing relevance one last time. After a minute, she opened a new note in her phone and typed, I didn't ruin them. They were already broken. A week later, a teaser trailer hit the internet. Dramatic music, flashing headlines, and Jasmine's voice saying, Everybody called me the villain. Maybe I was just the truth nobody wanted to hear. Atlanta lost its mind again. Rasheeda saw the clip while having dinner with her team. She smirked. She's still talking. Her manager nodded. Yeah, and people listening. Rasheeda took a sip of her drink. Let them. The truth don't need my defense. Kirk, however, wasn't as calm. When the trailer dropped, his phone blew up. Producers from Love and Hip Hop wanted to tie it into the upcoming reunion special. They called it a career-defining moment. Kirk just stared at the email and muttered, A lifetime of mistakes ain't no storyline. He closed his laptop, shut the lights, and sat in silence. The night before the reunion filming, Kirk drove past the Frost Bistro one last time. He parked, got out, and stood under the neon sign. He could almost hear Rasheeda's laughter echoing from the days when things were good before scandals. Before receipts, before regret, he whispered into the air. I hope you find peace, Sheeta. The next morning, cameras rolled again. The reunion set was brighter, glossier, more expensive, but the tension was the same. Rasheeda sat elegantly, calm and collected. Kirk was 2 seats away, trying not to look at her. Jasmine arrived last, wearing a fitted white dress and sunglasses, pretending not to notice the stares. When the host introduced them, the audience erupted. Atlanta's most complicated trio, back together again. Kirk sighed, rubbing his hands together. The questions started immediately about the bracelet, the leaked texts, the rooftop photo. Jasmine defended herself, Rasheeda spoke with poise, and Kirk tried to take accountability. But nothing could rewrite what had already been seen. Then the host asked, Rasheeda, do you forgive Kirk? The room went silent. She took a deep breath. Forgiveness ain't for him, she said softly. It's for me. And I already did that. Applause filled the studio. Kirk looked at her with quiet admiration. Jasmine rolled her eyes but stayed silent. When the cameras cut, Rasheeda stood up to leave. Kirk walked over slowly. "You look good," he said. She smiled faintly. "Peace looks better." And just like that, she walked away for the last time. Outside the studio, the Atlanta sun burned bright, the air thick but alive. Kirk watched her car disappear into traffic, realizing that the city might forgive him one day but she never would. And maybe that was okay, because sometimes, the greatest endings are the ones that finally stop repeating. 3 weeks after that reunion aired, Atlanta was still echoing with aftershocks. Every podcast gossip page and morning radio show was chewing over the same question: was this finally the end of Kirk and Rasheeda, or just another pause before the cycle started again? People couldn't decide if they were rooting for closure or chaos. The reunion episode shattered viewership records. The audience reactions were fierce. Half cheered for Rasheeda's calm power. Half speculated Kirk looked broken for real this time. Jasmine, meanwhile, became a trending topic for her silent smirk when the host asked if she regretted anything. She hadn't said a word, but her expression was enough to ignite 1,000 memes. "That smile says she knew exactly what she was doing," one comment read. But behind the glossy lights and viral clips, each of them was moving differently. Rasheeda had gone quiet again, throwing herself into work. She filmed back-to-back brand campaigns, opened a new store in Houston, and launched a podcast about self-growth that shot to the top of Atlanta's charts in its first week. Her voice, steady and thoughtful, opened every episode with the line, "Healing is louder than revenge." Fans loved it. Even those who didn't care about the Frost drama tuned in, saying her words hit like truth from someone who'd finally stopped bleeding. Kirk, on the other hand, was slipping out of sight. He rarely left the house. Frost Bistro was now being run entirely by his nephew. The man who once chased cameras was now ducking them. One night, he sat on the couch with old home videos playing on mute: birthday parties, family trips, old love and hip-hop clips. His younger self looked so certain. "You really thought you had it all figured out," he muttered. The phone rang. Scrappy again. "Yo, bro, you good?" Kirk sighed. "Define good." "You sound empty," Scrappy said. "That's 'cause I am." He tried to fill the silence with music, business calls, even church visits, but nothing settled the noise inside his head. Atlanta, for all its chaos, had moved on. The new season's drama belonged to someone else now. Jasmine, meanwhile, was on a full redemption tour. Her documentary dropped on the streaming platform, filled with soft lighting, slow piano music, and teary confessionals. "I wasn't perfect," she said to the camera, "but I was real. I fell for the wrong man and paid the price." The episode cut to old clips of her and Kirk smiling during better days, interspersed with commentary from her friends defending her side. She was young, naive, caught up, one said. The show ended with Jasmine saying, "If you see me smiling now, it's because I finally forgave myself." The internet exploded again. Some called it manipulative, others said it was brave. Kirk didn't comment publicly, but people close to him said he turned off his TV halfway through. Rasheeda's reaction was colder. She posted a single line on Twitter. "Some people heal in private, others hire cameras." It went viral instantly. A few days later, fate threw them back together one last time. Both were invited to a mutual friend's birthday event at a downtown rooftop. Kirk almost didn't go, but Scrappy convinced him. "You can't hide forever, man," he said. Rasheeda arrived later, radiant in a white dress, her energy calm and self-assured. When their eyes met across the room, it wasn't anger this time, it was acceptance. Kirk walked over slowly, drink in hand. "Wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "Wasn't sure you'd talk," she replied. They both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that comes from exhaustion more than humor. "How you been?" he asked. "Better," she said simply. "Peaceful. That looked good on you," he said. "It feels good too," she replied. There was no spark left. No tension, just the quiet acknowledgement that some love stories burn out no matter how long they've been burning. They stood there for a few minutes, talking like old friends. When the music got louder, she leaned in and said, "Take care of yourself, Kirk. For real this time." "You too, Sheeda," he said softly, and as she walked away into the crowd, he realized for the first time that he meant it. Later that night, Jasmine posted a story from the same event, a photo of the skyline with the caption, "Some lessons come with peace, others with pain." Fans immediately speculated she saw them talking, but this time, neither Kirk nor Rasheeda responded. They were both done feeding Atlanta's obsession. In the following weeks, the storm finally started to fade. Frost Bistro's traffic picked up again under new management. Rasheeda's podcast got signed by a major network, and Jasmine moved quietly out of the city. But Atlanta, as always, kept talking. In barbershops, nail salons, corner stores, People still said, "You hear about Kirk and Rasheeda?" And someone would answer, "Yeah man, they finally ended it for good." Yet even in that finality, there was nostalgia, respect for the chaos they'd survived, and for the lessons they left behind. Because in Atlanta, legends don't fade, they just learn to stop performing the pain. Weeks turned into months, and Atlanta had finally gone quiet. No new scandals, no surprise lives, no paparazzi trailing behind tinted cars. For the first time in years, Kirk Frost could walk into a cafe without whispers following him, but peace, as he was learning, felt foreign. He'd gotten so used to chaos that stillness made him uneasy. Every time he scrolled through his feed and saw Rasheeda's name trending for her business wins or motivational clips, a part of him ached it not with jealousy, but recognition. She had found balance in the same storm that drowned him. One Saturday morning, Kirk sat on the porch of his mother's house in Decatur. He hadn't been there since the reunion aired. The air smelled of rain and Jasmine's strange irony, given how much that name used to haunt him. His mother joined him, sipping her tea, eyes scanning his tired face. "You look like a man who finally realized peace ain't punishment," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe I just realized peace costs more than pride." She nodded. "And you paid late, but you paid." Rasheeda, meanwhile, was standing in a film studio, surrounded by bright lights and cameras, but this time, it was all hers. She was launching her own talk show, Unfiltered with Rasheeda, focused on women rebuilding after betrayal, business, and heartbreak. The producers were cautious, asking if she wanted to avoid questions about her marriage. She just smiled and said, "That chapter already taught me everything I needed. Number need to rewrite it." When the trailer dropped, the internet lost its mind again, but this time, it wasn't scandal. It was admiration. "Boss energy," one comment read. "She flipped pain into power," said another. The show's debut episode opened with her saying, "Sometimes love don't end when people separate, it ends when you stop letting pain control your story." Fans flooded her page with praise, calling it her rebirth moment. Kirk watched the premiere quietly from his living room. When she smiled on screen, he whispered, "You always knew how to rise." Across town, Jasmine was living differently too. The attention from her documentary had faded, but she'd used it to launch a small cosmetics line. She was no longer the villain in headlines, just another woman trying to move on. One evening, she ran into an old friend at a restaurant. "Girl, you still in Atlanta?" the friend asked. Jasmine smiled. "For now, but this time, I'm staying out the blogs." The friend laughed. "That's growth." "Nah," Jasmine said softly. "That's survival." Kirk's silence didn't last forever. A new music label offered him a behind-the-scenes consultant position. Nothing flashy, just steady work. He took it. It felt good to be useful again without cameras. One day, during a meeting, a young artist asked, "You that dude from Love and Hip Hop, right?" Kirk chuckled. "Used to be. What's it like being famous?" the kid asked. Kirk paused. "Expensive," he said simply. That night, as he drove home through the city, he passed Frost Bistro. The lights were bright again, the laughter alive. Through the window, he saw Rasheeda's new team managing it with ease. For a moment, he thought about stopping, about walking in and congratulating them. But then he smiled, shook his head, and kept driving. He didn't belong in that story anymore, and for the first time, that truth didn't sting. In the weeks that followed, Atlanta's streets filled with new headlines, new drama, new names. Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jasmine became part of the city's mythology, a saga people whispered about over brunch. A reminder of what fame can build and what ego can destroy. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Rasheeda visited her old home. It was empty, now, the walls echoing faintly with the ghosts of arguments and laughter. She walked into the kitchen, ran her hand across the counter, and smiled softly. "Thank you," she whispered, to the house, to the pain, to the lessons. Before leaving, she placed a folded note on the counter. It read, "You were never my failure, you were my awakening." Later that night, Kirk returned to the house for the first time in months. He saw the note, picked it up, and read it twice. His throat tightened, but he smiled through it. "You always did know how to say the last word," he murmured. He tucked the note in his wallet, stepped outside, and looked up at the Atlanta skyline glowing against the dusk. Somewhere across the city, Jasmine stood on her own balcony, gazing at the same skyline. The air hummed with peace, not gossip. She whispered, finally, to no one in particular. The Frost saga had ended, not with shouting, not with scandal, but with 3 people who finally learned that love isn't always meant to be fixed. Sometimes, it's just meant to be understood and left where it broke. And in Atlanta, where every story starts loud and ends louder, that quiet ending felt like the biggest twist of all. 2 years later, Atlanta had changed, but it hadn't forgotten. Time had done what shouting and apologies never could. It dulled the edges. The Frost name still carried weight, but in a different way now. Kirk had rebuilt himself quietly, working behind the scenes in the music world, mentoring younger artists who barely remembered his scandals. He no longer dressed for cameras or measured his worth in followers. His days were simple: studio mornings, church on Sundays, long walks through Piedmont Park when the city was still half asleep. He hadn't spoken to Rasheeda in almost a year. Not because there was bitterness left, but because both of them finally understood that peace sometimes means distance. Every few months, her face would flash across a billboard or a talk show clip, smiling, confident, thriving. He'd nod to himself and think, that's the version of her I always knew she could be. Rasheeda's show was in its 2nd season now, filmed in a sleek downtown studio. It had outgrown the gossip world and turned into something real: conversations with women, artists, even politicians, about rebuilding trust, about rising after humiliation. Atlanta called her the Phoenix. Her voice had become softer, more reflective. When interviewers asked about her past, she'd say, "I used to chase perfection. Now I chase peace." In one episode, the producer slipped in a surprise clip of an old love and hip-hop moment, Kirk apologizing on camera years ago. The audience gasped, expecting her to flinch, but she didn't. She smiled faintly and said, "I'm not ashamed of that chapter. It's the reason I learned what self-respect sounds like." The studio erupted in applause. Meanwhile, Jasmine had moved to Houston, away from the Atlanta glare. Her cosmetics line had found quiet success online. She wasn't famous anymore, but she was steady. One night, during a live Q&A with her followers, someone asked, "If you could go back, would you change what happened with Kirk and Rasheeda?" She paused for a long time, then said, "I'd change who I was back then, not for them, for me." The comments section filled with hearts. The Frost story had become legend, a cautionary tale told in whispers whenever new drama broke. "Remember Kirk and Rasheeda?" people would say. "They taught the whole city what pride can cost." Even producers at VH1 used to joke, "There'll never be another Frost era. Lightning like that don't strike twice." One autumn afternoon, fate crossed their paths again. Kirk was at a charity event for youth mentorship, shaking hands and laughing with other sponsors, when he heard someone say his name softly. He turned. Rasheeda stood there in a navy suit, poised, radiant. The crowd noise faded for a second. "Long time," she said with a small smile. "Too long," he replied. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, both aware of the weight between them and the years that had carried it. "I see you doing good," she said, glancing at the banner behind him. "Trying to," he answered. "You?" She smiled. "Thriving." "Yeah," he said softly. "You always do." She laughed lightly. "Used to. Now I just live." They talked for a few minutes about work, their kids, Atlanta, old friends. It wasn't heavy, wasn't dramatic, just to people who had finally made peace with their shared ghosts. Before she left, she said, "I'm glad you made it through." "Wouldn't have if you hadn't left," he replied quietly. She didn't respond, just squeezed his hand once and walked away, her heels clicking softly across the marble floor. He watched her go, smiling not with longing, but gratitude. Later that evening, Kirk sat in his car, scrolling through the event photos online. One image caught his eye. Him and Rasheeda laughing mid-conversation, framed by the city lights. Someone had captioned it, "Full circle." He saved it too, his phone without thinking, then locked the screen and leaned back. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a headline, just a man who finally learned to stand still. That night, Rasheeda posted a quote to her story. It read, "Forgiveness isn't letting someone back in. It's letting yourself move forward without hate." No names, no tags, but everyone who saw it knew. The comments were kind this time, reflective, almost reverent. Atlanta, for once, stayed quiet. Jasmine saw the post from Houston and smiled faintly. She sent Rasheeda a short DM. "You look happy. Genuinely, I'm glad." Rasheeda replied with a single heart emoji. No grudges, no shade, just peace. The Frost saga had burned the city, reshaped careers, broken hearts, and built legacies. But in the end, it had done something more remarkably. It grew all 3 of them up. Kirk learned humility, Jasmine learned accountability, and Rasheeda learned freedom. And on nights when Atlanta's air felt heavy and the skyline glowed red with sunset, people still said their names. Not with pity, not with gossip, but with a strange kind of respect, because for all their mistakes, they'd done what most couldn't survive the storm. Tell the truth, and walk away still standing. And in that city, that's the closest anyone ever gets to redemption. Another summer rolled through Atlanta, slow and heavy, the way the city always felt before something new started. This time, though there were no cameras chasing after Kirk Frost or whispers waiting outside Frost Bistro, he had moved into a smaller house outside the city, somewhere quiet enough that he could hear crickets again. He kept his days simple: mornings at the gym, afternoons at the studio, evenings spent mentoring kids who reminded him of himself before fame. They didn't care about his past. To them, he was just Mr. Frost, the one who gave them advice and brought them snacks after recording sessions. Every now and then, one of them would ask, "You used to be on TV, right?" Kirk would chuckle. "Used to," he'd say. "Now I'm just living real life." Rasheeda was doing more than living, she was expanding. Her talk show had gone national, syndicated in multiple cities. She was flying coast to coast, interviewing artists, politicians, activists, and survivors. Her calm, measured voice had become something like a signature. She was no longer the woman Kirk cheated on. She was the woman who built her own empire from the ashes. She didn't flaunt it. She didn't need to. Success followed her because she finally stopped chasing it. One evening, after wrapping a segment in New York, she walked into her hotel room and found a delivery waiting, a bouquet of yellow tulips and a note that simply read, "Still proud of UK." She stared at it for a long moment, then smiled, set it on the table, and said quietly, "Me too." In Houston, Jasmine was filming a short promotional ad for her brand, J. Busey. The company had grown slowly but steadily, her products stocked in boutiques and salons. She kept her image clean now, distant from gossip. When interviewers tried to bring up her past, she'd smile politely and steer the conversation back to business. One journalist, pushing too hard, asked, "Do you still talk to Kirk Frost?" Jasmine paused just long enough to make it awkward, then said softly, "Some chapters close so you can read the next one clearly." It became one of her most quoted lines. In Atlanta, Frost Bistro remained open, managed by Rasheeda's cousin now, still buzzing with laughter and soul music on Friday nights. People came for the food but stayed for the nostalgia, pointing to old photos on the walls and saying, "Remember when all that drama started here?" The story had become folklore, part of the city's culture, a reminder of how loud love can be when it's breaking apart. One Sunday afternoon, Kirk decided to stop by the bistro quietly. He sat at a back table, ordered the same dish he and Rasheeda used to share, and watched families laughing at nearby tables. A few customers recognized him, but no one asked for photos. That was new and it felt good. When he finished, he left a generous tip and a short note for the manager. "Keep her dream alive. You're doing it right." Outside, the sun was low, painting everything gold. As he got into his car, he spotted a billboard across the street, advertising Rasheeda's new show, "Season Her Smiling," in front of bright lights. The tagline reading, "From broken to built." He smiled to himself and whispered, "You did it." Later that evening, Rasheeda was on set filming an episode about forgiveness. Her guest, a pastor, asked her, "What does closure really mean to you?" She paused, thinking carefully. "Closure," she said, "isn't about ending a story. It's about ending your need to rewrite it." The audience clapped softly, some people even tearing up. Across the country, viewers nodded through their screens, understanding she wasn't just talking about guests, she was talking about herself. That night, Jasmine was scrolling through clips on social media when she came across that very quote. She watched it twice, then whispered, "She right." For the first time in years, she shared one of Rasheeda's posts to her own story, tagging her with a single word, "Respect." Fans were shocked. Some thought it was fake. Others said it was growth. Rasheeda saw it hours later and smiled, reposting it without comment. That small gesture ended a years-long war the internet had never stopped fueling. A month later, Kirk attended an award ceremony where Rasheeda was being honored for her contributions to Atlanta's culture and business. He sat near the back, unnoticed. When she took the stage, poised and radiant, the crowd rose in applause. Her voice didn't shake when she spoke. "This city has watched me fall, rebuild, and rise again. I don't regret any of it. Atlanta taught me that survival is an art and I mastered it." When she stepped off the stage, their eyes met across the crowd for a split second. She smiled faintly. He nodded once, and that was enough. No words. No reconciliation scene. Just quiet acknowledgement between two people who had finally learned to let go. The next morning, the Atlanta sun poured through the city like forgiveness itself. Kirk drove back through Midtown, passing familiar streets. At a red light, he turned on the radio and caught Rasheeda's voice from an interview replay. "What's next for me? Peace. Just peace." He laughed softly. "Guess that's for me too," he said. And somewhere across the city, Jasmine was packing for a new business trip, humming to herself, content. For once, Atlanta had no new gossip, no secret messages, no explosions, just three people living separately, quietly, and finally free. Because the real ending to the Frost story wasn't scandal, or revenge, or ratings. It was the moment they all realized peace doesn't make headlines, but it's the only ending worth writing. That winter, Atlanta moved slower, the city breathing easy now that its favorite storm had passed. Frost Bistro kept its steady rhythm, new faces, new energy, but the ghosts of the past had settled into memory. People came for the food, took pictures near the mural on the wall, and whispered softly to newcomers. That's where the Frost story started. It was history now, not gossip. Kirk's life had become small, but in the right way. He'd traded attention for quiet purpose. His mentorship program was growing, pulling in kids from neighborhoods that reminded him of where he started. Some called him Uncle Kirk, others Og Frost. He never corrected them. When one teenager asked why he never remarried, he smiled and said, "I already met the love of my life." Sometimes that's all you get, one real one. And that's enough. His days passed peacefully until one gray afternoon when he received a letter. Real paper, real ink. The handwriting was neat, unmistakably hers. "Rasheeda." He stared at it for a while before opening it. "Kirk," it began, "I heard about what you're doing with the kids. I'm proud of you. You finally found your peace, and I'm glad you did. I used to think closure meant walking away. Now I know it means seeing someone you once loved finally become who they were meant to be. I hope you're well, R." He read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it inside the same wallet where he'd kept her old note years ago. Rasheeda, meanwhile, was in Los Angeles, preparing for a guest appearance on a major network show. The producers wanted her to talk about her journey from reality TV chaos to business success. Before the cameras rolled, one of them asked, "Do you ever think about going back to love and hip-hop?" She laughed softly. "I lived that chapter already. I don't need to replay it to remember who I am." The interview went viral not for drama, but for how calm and clear she sounded. People commented, "This is growth personified," and, "Rasheeda really said peace louder than pain." She didn't respond to the posts. She didn't need to. Across the country, Jasmine was on a stage of her own, giving a talk at a women's entrepreneurship conference in Houston. She wore a simple black suit, no drama in her tone. "Mistakes don't define you," she said to the crowd. "How you grow after them does." She didn't mention names, but everyone knew the history that gave her words weight. The audience applauded, not out of pity, but respect. Spring came again. Atlanta bloomed brighter than it had in years. The city had moved on, but traces of their story still floated through conversations like folklore. Couples argued and made up over dinner at Frost Bistro, quoting Rasheeda's talk show lines. Barbershops debated whether Kirk had really changed. Beauty salons played Jasmine's old interviews, saying, "She really turned her life around." And for once, it wasn't gossip. It was reflection. One Sunday morning, Kirk was sitting in church when the pastor said something that stuck with him. "Some blessings don't come back around, they just leave their lesson behind." He felt that one deep. After service, he walked outside, greeted a few people, and noticed a small crowd near the steps. Someone was filming for Rasheeda's show on episode about rebuilding faith. Their eyes met briefly. She gave him a polite smile and waved once. He waved back. No tension, no awkwardness, just two lives that had finally settled into parallel peace. Months later, Rasheeda's show aired that episode. Toward the end, the camera panned to the church crowd, catching Kirk in the background for a brief second. Fans spotted it instantly, posting screenshots. "Look, that's Kirk in the audience," someone wrote. Another replied, "That's not drama, that's healing." The clip spread quietly, warmly. No one laughed. No one argued. It was just a moment of grace. By the end of that year, Kirk's program had expanded into a full foundation. Rasheeda's brand was partnering with national retailers. Jasmine's beauty line had landed in major stores. All three had rebuilt themselves, not perfectly, but truthfully. One evening, as the sun sank low over the Atlanta skyline, Kirk sat on his porch, phone in hand. He scrolled through social media, seeing his city shine new artists, new faces, new stories. He smiled and said to himself, "Our time's over, but we did leave something behind." And maybe that was the real ending. Not the breakups, not the fights, not the tears. The legacy. The proof that even when love collapses in public, growth can still bloom in private. Some nights, if you drove past Frost Bistro late enough, you'd see the lights still glowing, music humming faintly, the walls lined with photos of what once was. Rasheeda never took those down. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe she understood that some stories aren't meant to be erased, they're meant to remind you how far you've come. And Atlanta, a city built on second chances, remembered too, because the Frost name, once heavy with scandal, had turned into something else, entirely a symbol of how even the loudest chaos can fall quiet. And how, sometimes, forgiveness doesn't mean reunion, it just means peace. Another year slipped by, soft and uneventful, the kind of quiet that once would have felt strange to all three of them. Atlanta had grown around their absence, new names lighting up headlines, new faces taking over the shows where their story had once ruled. The Frost era had become nostalgia-old reruns, clips shared for Throwback Thursday, and occasional reaction videos from fans who still couldn't believe how public it all had been. Kirk, now 54, was aging differently. He had lines around his eyes, not from stress this time, but from peace. He had learned how to live without spectacle. Most mornings, he jogged through Piedmont Park before sunrise, then drove to the youth studio where his foundation operated. It wasn't fancy, just a repurposed warehouse with bright murals and borrowed instruments, but every wall hummed with music. Kids who once looked lost now had purpose, and Kirk, for all his history, had become the kind of mentor people actually trusted. Every so often, an old song from his producing days would come on the radio, and the younger ones would point and say, "You made that." He'd grin. "Back when I was still trying to impress the wrong people." They'd laugh, not understanding the full story. And that was the beauty of it. Most of them didn't know about the scandals. They just knew him as the man who showed up every day. Rasheeda's show had become a cultural landmark. It wasn't just about heartbreak or rebuilding anymore, it was about legacy. Her interviews drew artists, entrepreneurs, even young politicians who saw her as a voice of balance. Atlanta's mayor presented her with a civic award that year, calling her an example of resilience in the public eye. She accepted it with the same calm she'd mastered years ago, wearing an understated white suit and saying only, "I didn't rebuild to prove anyone wrong. I rebuilt so I could live right." After the ceremony, she stepped outside and found the night air cool and still. She stood under a streetlight for a long moment, watching cars move past, and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, just to the silence that once used to scare her. In Houston, Jasmine's company had crossed into international markets. She had a small team, no entourage, no paparazzi, just focus. She had stopped doing interviews entirely, except an essay she wrote for a magazine titled "The Story I Stopped Defending." In it, she wrote, "People love a scandal, but they forget the healing that comes after. I was broken once, but the truth is, you can outgrow your own mistakes if you stop feeding them attention." The piece went viral for its maturity, not its confession. One afternoon, Jasmine received a package at her office no return address. Inside was a photo, her, Rasheeda, and Kirk from years ago, back when life was simpler, before the cameras. Taped to the back was a note in Rasheeda's handwriting. "We survived it. That's enough." Jasmine smiled, tucked it into her desk drawer, and didn't tell anyone. Sometime that spring, Kirk's foundation hosted a youth fundraiser gala downtown. The room glowed with golden light, laughter bouncing off the high ceilings. Halfway through the night, as Kirk was thanking sponsors from the stage, the crowd shifted. A ripple of whispers spread. He looked up and there was Rasheeda, walking in quietly, elegant as ever. Their eyes met across the room. He smiled genuinely, warmly, and, he said into the microphone, "I'd like to thank one more person. Someone who taught me more about growth than any book or mentor ever could. Miss Rasheeda Frost." Applause filled the room. She laughed, shaking her head, but clapped along with everyone else. After his speech, she approached him at the edge of the stage. "That was unnecessary," she said lightly. "No," he replied, "that was overdue." They talked for a while, surrounded by music and conversation. No tension, no nostalgia, just gratitude. "You did good," she told him. "You too," he said. "You always were better at finishing strong." She smiled. "Took me a few tries." A photographer snapped a picture of them, just one. It hit the blogs the next morning with the headline, "No drama, just growth. Kirk and Rasheeda reunite at charity event." The comments were kind for once. One user wrote, "Look at them, grown and unbothered. Atlanta history right there." Another said, "That's how you end a story, with peace, not pity." Weeks later, Kirk was back at the studio late at night when a young artist played him a new track. The beat was raw, emotional, full of pain and redemption. "You like it?" the boy asked. Kirk nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what truth sounds like." He leaned back, thinking of everything: Rasheeda's calm voice on TV, Jasmine's quiet success, the empty house that no longer felt lonely, just peaceful. He smiled to himself and whispered, "Guess we all finally made it." Outside, the city lights shimmered across the streets that had once carried every rumor, every heartbreak, every headline. Now they carried something quieter. Stories of healing, whispers of change. And somewhere, beneath that wide Atlanta sky, the Frost name had turned into something no scandal could ever touch again: legacy. Late summer settled over Atlanta, thick and golden, the kind of heat that made memories feel closer than they were. The city had changed, but there were still echoes: old songs drifting from car windows, voices in barbershops saying, "Remember when Kirk and Rasheeda had the whole city talking?" The difference was that now, those stories ended with laughter, not judgment. Time had softened even the sharpest edges. Kirk was in his office at the foundation, reviewing plans for a new youth studio in East Point. His desk was cluttered with notes, donation forms, and a photo frame holding two pictures, one of his younger self beside Rasheeda in their early years, the other of a group of kids smiling under a banner that read Frost Futures. He looked at them often, not with regret, but with a kind of gentle respect for the path that led him here. His phone buzzed. A message from Rasheeda. "Heard about your new location. Congratulations, Kirk. Proud of you." He smiled, typed back, "Thank you, Sheeda. Couldn't have done it without the lessons." She replied with a single prayer hands emoji. That was how they talked, now short, kind, easy. Rasheeda's own life had become a rhythm of calm work and purpose. Her show was entering its third season, her clothing line thriving again, and her name carried a new kind of weight: steady, respected, untouched by scandal. People no longer asked about Kirk when they met her. They asked about leadership, about longevity. She'd tell them, "You don't have to erase your past to grow from it. You just have to outlive it." She had started mentoring young women, many of them reality stars, chasing fame too fast. One, nervous and teary, once said, "But how did you survive being hated by the internet?" Rasheeda smiled softly. "By remembering I wasn't built for their approval," she said. "I was built for endurance." Down in Houston, Jasmine was preparing for her brand's 5th anniversary. She stood in a minimalist studio filled with white flowers and photographers, directing her team with quiet confidence. She wasn't chasing redemption anymore. She was living it. Her brand ambassador, a young influencer, asked during a break, "Do you ever think about Atlanta?" Jasmine laughed gently. "Atlanta taught me everything I needed to know about who I didn't want to be." A few weeks later, all three of their lives crossed again, not by plan, but by legacy. The network, that once aired Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta, announced a reunion documentary. Where are they now? Fans lost their minds, hoping for conflict, for nostalgia, for anything explosive. When producers reached out, Kirk agreed first, but only if it was filmed at his foundation. "I'm not here to fight old battles," he said. "I'm here to show how they made me better." Rasheeda hesitated but eventually agreed. Under one condition: no drama, no fake tears, no edits for ratings. Jasmine said yes last. "I'll come," she told the producers, "but not as a scandal, as a survivor." Filming took place on a clear September afternoon. Cameras rolled as Kirk guided the crew through his foundation, showing the kids recording, painting, creating. When Rasheeda arrived, she hugged him warmly. "You did good," she said. "You too," he replied. When Jasmine walked in, the room went quiet for a second, just long enough for the weight of years to hang between them. Then Rasheeda extended her hand. Jasmine took it. "We all made it out," Rasheeda said softly. Finally, Jasmine replied. The footage that aired weeks later wasn't what fans expected. There were no arguments, no accusations, just three people reflecting under the glow of maturity. Kirk said, "I used to think love was about holding on. Now I know it's about letting go with grace." Jasmine said, "I became the villain in a story I didn't even write, but I learned you can rewrite your ending." And Rasheeda, closing the segment, said, "We lived loud, but we healed quiet, and that's okay." When the documentary premiered, it trended everywhere, not for chaos, but for how calm it felt. People called it the most grown-up thing Atlanta ever saw. One fan tweeted, "They turned a scandal into scripture." Another wrote, "This is what real evolution looks like." That same night, Kirk sat outside his house, listening to crickets, scrolling through messages from fans thanking him for his honesty. One read, "You showed me men can change without pretending to be perfect." He smiled, pocketed his phone, and looked up at the night sky. Across town, Rasheeda sat in her backyard, candlelight flickering beside her as she read fan messages to. One said, "You made forgiveness look powerful." She closed her laptop, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Peace really is the prize." And in Houston, Jasmine watched the documentary alone. No wine, no tears, just quiet reflection. When it ended, she stood up, looked at her own reflection in the dark TV screen, and said, "That's not my shame anymore. That's my testimony." Months passed. The noise faded again. But Atlanta remembered. People still quoted their words in interviews, still replayed the documentary clips when talking about growth. The Frost story, once a headline soaked in betrayal, had turned into a parable about forgiveness and evolution. Years later, when Kirk's foundation built its 10th location, they hung a plaque on the front wall. It read, "In honor of every mistake that became a lesson, and every ending that led to peace." And underneath, small but clear, were 3 names: Kirk Frost, Rasheeda Frost, Jasmine Washington. No titles, no labels, just the truth of what they had finally become: 3 imperfect people who grew loud enough for the world to hear, and quiet enough to finally heal. And now, if you've made it this far, if you've lived every second of this story with us, then you know this wasn't just about Kirk, Rasheeda, or Jasmine. It was about everything that happens when love, pride, and pain mix under the same roof and get put on camera for the world to see. It's about what happens when choices collide with consequences, when forgiveness costs more than fame, and when people learn that healing doesn't always come with applause. Because Atlanta didn't just watch a scandal, it watched 3 people grow up in front of millions, make mistakes in public, break hearts, and rebuild from ashes. That's what makes this story unforgettable. It wasn't scripted, it felt real, raw, and messy in all the ways life actually is. And that's exactly why people still talk about it, years later. But now, let's talk about you. If you've ever been in Rasheeda's place trying to hold your dignity together, while the world tells you to give up, then you know how strength really looks when it's quiet. If you've ever been in Kirk's shoes, wanting to change but realizing the past doesn't let go easily, then you know what redemption feels like when it finally finds you. And if you've ever been like Jasmine, misunderstood, judged, or stuck in someone else's story, then you know how hard it is to rewrite your own ending. So tell me, what part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it Rasheeda walking out of Frost Bistro that night, head high, even when her heart was breaking? Was it Kirk finally sitting in that empty house, realizing peace doesn't come from winning arguments but from letting go? Or was it Jasmine, posting that final message: "I know filters, no excuses, just honesty"? Leave your thoughts in the comments right now. Tell me who you felt for the most. Tell me which moment made you pause. Because these stories aren't just entertainment, they're mirrors. They remind us that even the people who look perfect on camera are still human when the lights go off. And before you scroll, take a second to think about this. How many times have you forgiven someone who didn't deserve it? How many times have you kept fighting for peace that someone else kept breaking? How many times did you rebuild from something everyone said would destroy you? If you've done that even once, you already understand Rasheeda's journey better than anyone. Now here's the truth, most people won't admit. Sometimes, closure never comes in the way you expect. Sometimes, the apology you've been waiting for never shows up. Sometimes, the person who hurt you changes quietly, when you've already moved on. And that's okay, because closure doesn't come from them, it comes from you. It's when you stop needing the past to make sense, and start trusting that your future will. So if you're watching this tonight, maybe lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, maybe just needing a reminder that life goes on after betrayal, let this story be that reminder. Let it tell you that mistakes can turn into milestones, that endings can lead to peace, and that strength doesn't always look like fighting, it often looks like walking away. And to everyone who's been riding with us since the beginning, through every leak, every fight, every headline, thank you. This story was for you. For every fan who saw themselves in these moments. For every person who knows how it feels to love someone and still lose them. For every heart that learned to beat differently after pain, this is your story too. So go ahead, drop a heart emoji in the comments if you believe people can change. Drop a fire emoji if you think Rasheeda's glow is the definition of power. Drop a prayer emoji if you believe peace is better than revenge. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're just getting started. We don't tell fairy tales on this channel. We tell reality the way it happens. Raw, complicated, beautiful. We talk about the mistakes that made headlines, and the healing that happened quietly behind them. We follow the lives of people who remind us that fame doesn't protect you from heartbreak, and that sometimes the biggest lessons come after the cameras stop rolling. So, if you believe in growth, redemption, and second chances, you're in the right place. This channel isn't just about drama, it's about evolution. It's about the rise, the fall, and the comeback that nobody saw coming. And whether you love Rasheeda's resilience, Kirk's honesty, or Jasmine's redemption, one thing's clear, they all taught Atlanta something. They taught us that peace isn't born out of perfection. It's born out of surviving what tried to break you. And here's the final thought I want you to hold on to tonight. Love doesn't fail because it ends. Love only fails when you stop learning from it. Every heartbreak teaches you who you are, what you need, and what you'll never accept again. Rasheeda found power in walking away. Kirk found peace in accountability. Jasmine found clarity in solitude. And maybe, just maybe, their story will help you find your own version of that. So take a deep breath. Whatever you've lost, whatever you've learned, whatever you're still carrying, it's not the end of your story. It's the start of a new chapter. And before we go, make sure you like this video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on your notifications. Because the next episode is going to dig even deeper into how fame, love, and betrayal can change lives forever. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Drop your thoughts below. Who grew the most? Who surprised you the most? And what did this whole journey teach you about forgiveness and starting over? Remember, this isn't just their story. It's yours too. This is Atlanta. This is real. This is Frost Legacy. And it's far from over. Until next time, stay tuned, stay honest, and as always, stay watching.